How curious that the most feared species now serves as our shield. The Grand Chancellor of the Galactic Assembly clasped all 6 of his appendages together, his luminescent skin flickering with anxiety patterns. The universe has a perverse sense of humor, doesn't it? YX Tor. I shifted uncomfortably in my exoskeleton. As the official liaison between humans and the rest of a civilized galaxy, I'd been summoned to explain, yet again, why Earth's military response to the Voidborn incursion was taking so long. Chancellor Fax, with all due respect, humans operate differently than the Assembly expects. They are thorough, methodical, sometimes infuriatingly so. I projected what I hoped was confidence, though my inner membranes quivered. Thorough? They are savages. Just 300 cycles ago, they were splitting atoms to obliterate their own cities. Chancellor Fax's skin flashed crimson with frustration. Yes, and now they're the only ones standing between us and total annihilation, I reminded him. Perhaps I should explain how we got here. The Chancellor gestured impatiently with his upper limbs. Enlighten me, then. Make me understand why we are placing our fate in the hands of creatures who still enjoy watching objects explode for entertainment. That's exactly why. Chancellor, that's exactly why. Let me take you back about 500 Earth years. The Galactic Assembly had just discovered humanity, and we were, how to put this delicately, horrified. Here was a species that had spent most of its evolutionary history figuring out increasingly efficient ways to kill each other. Their entertainment consisted of simulated violence. Their literature glorified conflict. Their greatest technological advancements came from their wars. They are barbaric, declared Science Minister Kix during the first assessment meeting. They communicate by forcing air through meat flaps in their faces for galaxy's sake. They consume other living creatures by breaking them down with acids inside their bodies. Added cultural attaché Zorn. Sometimes while the creatures are still alive. The assembly chambers erupted in disgusted trills and whistles. And yet, I said, holding up one appendage for attention, they have managed to reach their moon with nothing but combustion technology and mathematical calculations done on paper. The chamber fell silent. Impressive, if reckless, Chancellor Fax acknowledged. What do you recommend? Liaison ZYX Tor. Observation, for now. Humans are still primitive, but their development curve is unusual. Most species take thousands of years to advance from agricultural to digital technology. They have done it in a few hundred. And so began our covert monitoring of Earth, which humans hilariously misinterpreted as visits from what they called aliens. As if we were the foreigners in this galaxy. The Assembly had formed 10 million years before the first human ancestor crawled out of the primordial soup that we watched, bemused, as humans stumbled through their technological adolescence. They developed global communication networks primarily to share images of infant felines and argue with strangers. They created artificial intelligence, then immediately feared it would destroy them. A stunningly accurate assessment, I might add. Look at this, my research assistant Clicks said one day, nearly a century into our observation. They have created entertainment about us destroying them. We reviewed the human film, a primitive form of visual storytelling. In it, being somewhat resembling our Zentari colleagues, obliterated human cities with energy weapons. But the peculiar thing, Clicks continued, is that in their story, they defeat the invaders with a pathogen. Biological warfare against a space-faring civilization. I clicked my mandibles in amusement. How charmingly naive. It's something about human imagination unsettled me. While the Assembly's 27-member species had achieved interstellar harmony through logical cooperation, humans seem to thrive on conflict, even hypothetical ones. They are constantly preparing for wars that aren't happening, I noted in my report. They imagine threats from beyond their atmosphere, despite having no concrete evidence of our existence. Chancellor Fax's response was immediate. Perhaps they are instinctively preparing for something we haven't foreseen. How prophetic those words would become. The year humans call 2042 marked our first official contact. Earth had finally developed rudimentary fusion technology and established a permanent base on Mars, achievements that qualified them for provisional recognition under Assembly Protocol 7B. That I was selected as first contact liaison primarily because my species can modulate our speech organs to approximate human language. After extensive preparation, including watching every first contact scenario humans had imagined, most involving either genocide or improbable reproductive encounters, we descended to Earth in a standard diplomatic vessel that we chose a neutral location, the United Nations headquarters in New York City, and timed our arrival during a General Assembly meeting for maximum efficiency. In retrospect, we might have given them a bit more warning. People of Earth, I announced through our ship's external communication system, we represent the Galactic Assembly, a cooperative of 27 sentient species. We come in peace to welcome humanity to the interstellar community. There was a moment of stunned silence, followed by total chaos. Several security personnel fainted. 3 diplomats required medical attention. One particularly excitable representative from a small island nation proclaimed it the greatest bloody day in human history before attempting to embrace our ship's landing gear. Once order was restored, we established communication protocols with Earth's leaders. Our translation algorithms needed significant adjustment. Human languages are riddled with idioms, metaphors, and context-dependent meanings that our literal-minded systems struggled with. "So you have been watching us?" asked President Nakamura of the United Nations Security Council, her expression unreadable to my still-developing understanding of human facial gestures. "For approximately 500 of your years, yes," I confirmed. "Standard observation protocol for pre-interstellar species, like animals in a zoo," muttered General Zhou of the Chinese Federation. "More like developing sentience in a nursery." I corrected, not understanding why this caused several humans to tighten their facial muscles. I would later learn this expression indicated suppressed anger. "And what happens now?" President Nakamura asked. "Do we join your assembly?" "Eventually, perhaps. For now, you will be granted observer status. We will share limited technological insights, cultural exchange, that sort of thing." "Limited technological insights?" General Zhou leaned forward. "What exactly does that mean?" I gestured casually. "Non-military applications only. Renewable energy generation, certain medical advances, sustainable agriculture. Assembly protocol prohibits sharing weaponry or defense technologies with provisional members." The room grew tense. I noticed several humans exchanging glances. "So you will share technology to grow better vegetables, but not to defend ourselves if threatened." President Nakamura clarified. "The Assembly ensures the protection of all recognized worlds." I explained patiently. "There would be no need for Earth to defend itself." General Zhou laughed, a short, sharp sound lacking humor. 500 years watching us, and you still don't understand humans at all, do you?" I would reflect on those words many times in the years to come. Human integration into galactic society was rocky. They attended assembly meetings with a mixture of awe and suspicious scrutiny. They absorbed our technological offerings with impressive speed, but constantly questioned why certain advances were withheld. And they never, ever stopped preparing for conflict. What exactly do humans think is going to attack them? Chancellor Fax asked me during one particularly frustrating session. "The galaxy has been at peace for 50,000 years. They believe peace requires vigilance," I explained. "Their history suggests to them that power vacuums inevitably lead to aggression." Barbaric thinking, Fax dismissed. A product of their evolutionary path as predator primates. 10 years into Earth's provisional membership, humans had established colonies on Mars, Europa, and Titan. They'd absorbed assembly medical technology to extend their lifespans and cure most diseases. Their economy had transformed with our energy production methods. Yet they continued building ships with obvious military capabilities disguised as exploratory vessels or emergency response craft. When questioned, they cited abundance of caution and insurance against unknown variables. The assembly tolerated these eccentricities largely because humans proved surprisingly valuable in other ways. Their arts captivated many species. Their music, in particular, triggered emotional responses even in beings with vastly different sensory apparatus. Their cuisine, once you got past the whole consuming formerly living things aspect, became a sensation across 17 star systems. And then there was their problem-solving approach. Where assembly species typically sought consensus through exhaustive logical analysis, humans embraced what they called intuitive leaps and creative thinking. They suggested solutions that seemed absurd until, somehow, they worked. Humans don't follow maps, I explained to a frustrated science minister after a particularly chaotic joint research project. They prefer to machete their way through uncharted jungles, then draw the map afterward. Inefficient, the minister sniffed. Perhaps, I conceded, but they occasionally find paths no one else thought to look for. And then, 27 years after first contact, we discovered how desperately we would need those unmapped paths. The Voidborn arrived, without warning from beyond the galactic rim. They weren't a species in any conventional sense, more like living equations, patterns of energy that consumed organized matter to propagate their existence. Their first attack hit the Pulcrack system, home to our greatest scientific minds. Billions died before we even understood what was happening. There was no communication, no apparent motive, just systematic destruction of anything with complex molecular organization. The Assembly, which hadn't faced a genuine threat in 50 millennia, responded with baffling ineffectiveness. Emergency sessions devolved into philosophical debates about the nature of the attackers. Research teams proposed elaborate studies that would take decades to implement. Evacuation plans stalled amid disputes over resource allocation. 3 more systems fell while we deliberated. It was during an especially circular debate that Commander Sandra Jackson, Earth's military attaché to the Assembly, finally slammed her hand on the conference table. Enough. Her voice cut through the chamber like a plasma torch. While you're all discussing the philosophical implications, these things are consuming actual planets with actual people on them. Representative Jackson, Chancellor Fax began soothingly. We understand human impatience, but the Assembly must reach consensus before. Before what? Before there's no Assembly left. Jackson stood, all 6 feet of imposing human female, radiating what I now recognized as controlled fury. You have spent 50,000 years forgetting how to fight, and it shows. The diplomatic implications of began another delegate. There are no diplomatic implications. Jackson's voice rose. These entities aren't communicating. They are not negotiating. They are consuming. Period. She activated a holographic display showing void-born movement patterns across the affected systems. They are expanding in a predictable harvesting pattern. At current rates, they will reach the Sol system, Earth, in approximately 3 years. But they will hit 6 more of your core worlds before that. The chamber fell silent as the grim mathematics sank in. Now, Jackson continued, her voice deadly calm. Earth has been developing defense technology since we joined the Assembly. Technology you all called paranoid and barbaric. We have prototype weapons specifically designed to disrupt energy pattern entities. Impossible, Science Minister Kix interjected. We have never encountered such beings before. How could humans possibly have prepared for them? Jackson's smile was tight. We imagine them, in our barbaric entertainment, in our paranoid defense simulations, in our primitive science fiction that you all found so amusing. She looked around the chamber. Earth is offering its full military capabilities to the Assembly, but we need resources and cooperation, and we need them now. Chancellor Fax's skin pulsed with conflicting emotion patterns. The Assembly has procedures for the Assembly, Jackson cut in, can follow its procedures right into extinction. Or it can let the humans do what humans do best, fight like hell to survive. I will never forget the silence that followed, nor the sight of Chancellor Fax, representative of 50,000 years of peaceful civilization, bowing his head to a species that had been splitting atoms to kill each other just a century before. Tell us what you need, Commander Jackson. The mobilization of Earth's military forces was unlike anything the Assembly had witnessed in living memory. Ships that humans had been hypothetically designing for decades suddenly materialized from classified facilities across their solar system. You have been preparing for this all along, I accused Admiral Okonkwo at Earth Defense Command headquarters in Geneva. The Admiral didn't bother denying it. Not for the Voidborn specifically, but for something. The universe is too vast and strange to assume eternal peace. The Assembly provided peace for 50 millennia and became complacent in it, he replied simply. Peace isn't natural, ZYX Tor. is a garden that must be tended and protected from the wilderness beyond its walls. Under human leadership, the Assembly's vast resources were channeled into what they called Project Bulwark. Scientific knowledge from 100 worlds was focused on understanding and combating the Voidborn threat. Manufacturing capacity from across the galaxy produced weapons and defensive systems designed by human engineers. Not everyone approved. Several Assembly species filed formal protests about humans' excessive influence and militarization of peaceful technology. These protests abruptly ceased when the Voidborn claimed their seventh star system. The first true battle occurred at Proxima Centauri, Earth's nearest stellar neighbor. The human-led defense fleet met the Voidborn advance with weapons specifically designed to disrupt their energy patterns. Weapons based partly on those ridiculous ray guns from early human science fiction to TO everyone's shock, they worked. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to slow the advance. Enough to give us hope. I was present on the command ship during that first engagement. I watched Commander Jackson calmly direct forces while consuming something humans call coffee, a bitter stimulant beverage that seems as essential to their military operations as oxygen. "You are enjoying this," I accused during a momentary lull in the battle. Jackson glanced at me, then back to her tactical display. "Not enjoying, but this is what we are built for, ZYX-Tor. Humans don't thrive in paradise. We thrive in adversity. That's disturbing. That's survival." She shrugged. "The universe doesn't care about our moral evaluations of it. The universe only respects strength and adaptability. Is that why you kept building weapons, even when we told you there were no threats?" Her expression softened slightly. "We kept building weapons because we read our own history. Peace is precious precisely because it's fragile." The battle raged for 17 hours. When it ended, the Voidborn had been pushed back for the first time since their arrival. The cost was high. 32 ships lost, over 2,000 lives, but it was a victory. As news spread across the Assembly worlds, something unexpected happened. Species that had regarded humans with disdain or pity began to look at them with something new: respect. Perhaps even admiration. 3 years into the war, Earth itself came under attack. The Voidborn, seemingly recognizing the source of the resistance, shifted their harvesting pattern to target the Sol system directly. I was on Mars when they arrived, overseeing evacuation protocols for non-combatants, including many Assembly citizens who had sought refuge in humanity's well-defended territory. The battle for Earth lasted 9 days. 9 days of continuous combat that transformed the orbital space around humanity's homeworld into a graveyard of ships and a testament to human tenacity. They fought with everything they had. Civilian vessels retrofitted with weapons. Experimental prototypes rushed into service. Even ancient chemical rockets repurposed as delivery systems for disruption devices. President Takumi addressed his people daily from an underground bunker in what humans call the Rocky Mountains. His messages were broadcast across all Assembly worlds. "We fight today, not just for Earth, but for life itself," he said on the 5th day, his voice steady despite the exhaustion evident on his face. "We fight as humans always have, with every ounce of determination, with every spark of ingenuity, with an absolute refusal to surrender while breath remains in our bodies." It was, I realized, the first time in my long life I had heard someone speak of war with something approaching reverence. That on the 9th day, Admiral Okonkwo deployed what humans call the last resort, a network of artificial microsingularities that created a temporary phase shift in the fabric of space-time around Earth. The science came from Assembly archives. The application was pure human audacity. For 16 minutes, Earth existed partly outside normal space. Enough time for the reinforcement fleet from Mars to arrive and engage the Voidborn from an unexpected vector. When the phase shift ended, the Voidborn were in retreat. Earth had suffered catastrophic damage. Millions had died, but humanity had held in the aftermath. As I walked through the ruins of New Denver with Commander Jackson, I finally asked the question that had bothered me since first contact. "How did you do it? How did a species with your limited technological development create defenses against something even the Assembly couldn't counter?" Jackson stopped walking and looked up at the sky, where repair drones and emergency vessels crisscrossed between partly destroyed orbital habitats. "Because we never stopped thinking like survivors," she said quietly. The assembly achieved peace and thought the job was done. Humans know better. We know that peace is just a pause between struggles. She gestured at the devastation around us. This is terrible, but it's not unexpected. Not to us. Humans have been imagining and preparing for apocalypse since we first looked up at the stars. Is that healthy? I wondered aloud. Healthy? She laughed. Probably not. But it kept the galaxy alive, didn't it? I couldn't argue with that. 5 years after the Battle of Earth, the war continues. The Voidborn have been pushed back to the galactic rim, but they haven't been eliminated. Human military leaders believe the conflict may last decades more. The assembly has changed profoundly. Military considerations now factor into our decisions. Defense technology development has become a priority, and humans, once regarded as primitive curiosities, now hold leadership positions throughout assembly institutions. Chancellor Fax, to his credit, adapted to the new reality with surprising flexibility. In his recent address commemorating the formation of the Joint Defense Command, he said something that would have been unthinkable before the war. Perhaps what the assembly needed most was not another harmonious voice in our peaceful chorus, but a discord that awakened us to danger. Perhaps we needed Earth's barbarism to survive. As for me, I have spent more time among humans than any other assembly representative. I have learned to appreciate their contradictions, their capacity for both terrible violence and breathtaking compassion, their ability to imagine the worst while hoping for the best. Just yesterday, I visited a primary school in rebuilt New Denver. Children, human young, asked me questions about life in the assembly. One small female with bright red head fur asked me something that stopped me cold. Mr. Alien, when the war is over, will you teach us how to be peaceful like you used to be? I didn't know how to answer at first. Finally, I said, perhaps we can teach each other. Your people can show us how to remain vigilant, and we can remind you why vigilance matters in the first place. She seemed satisfied with this answer, but later I found myself thinking about it more deeply. The truth is, the galaxy needs both approaches, the assembly's dedication to harmony and humanity's preparedness for conflict. Either philosophy alone leaves us vulnerable, either to outside threats or to our own darker natures. As I sit in my office overlooking the partially reconstructed United Nations complex, I'm reminded of something Admiral Okonkwo said during the darkest days of the Earth campaign. History doesn't end. It just takes unexpected turns. How unexpected that the species once dismissed as barbarians would become the shield bearers of civilization. How unexpected that their paranoia would save us all. How unexpected that I, Zwax Tor, chief diplomatic liaison to Earth, would come to see warfare as sometimes necessary and peace as something that must be actively defended. Perhaps the galaxy's greatest hope lies not in perfect civilization, but in the creative tension between the assembly's ancient wisdom and humanity's battle-born innovation. They called humans barbarians. Now, the galaxy begs for their protection. And somehow, in their strange, contradictory way, humans find this both amusing and fitting, as if they knew all along that the stars would eventually need their peculiar talents. The universe does, indeed, have a perverse sense of humor.